So with animals, it's kind of all about input, because animals consume, like these our Icelandic sheep are doing here, consuming hay. But animals also have a tendency to waste things, as our Icelandic sheep also do. So we're going to show you a little trick that we use to make, basically to make the hay bales go a little further, because what happens here with the sheep is they don't eat it all. They pick out what they like and they leave the rest. And here's an example of the rest. So what this is, we feed in these, usually we feed in these blue barrels cut in half. They work really well because they're easy to dump out if they get too full. And what generally happens, kind of once maybe twice a week, we have to give these a bit of a clean out, because they just kind of stop eating what's in them. They get a buildup of stuff they don't want, and that's kind of the end of that. So we clean them out. And what's nice about this, because we do feed most of the time in the container, it's still pretty clean. Now sometimes it's a little bit damp because we've had the freeze thaw, freeze rain sort of thing here, but it's still completely edible.
We end up with a wheelbarrow full of basically hay that there's absolutely nothing wrong with, and it decides to be allocated. We decide to allocate that to other animals. Sometimes it goes to the ponies and Bucky, but sometimes they don't need it either. So we feed this to our bunnies. And yes, this is not a sole product. They get their hay as well as their pellets or grains or whatever we're feeding that day. But this is just that extra roughage that they need. And instead of opening a new bale and feeding it, they're getting just what they need right from this basic waste product. Which kind of shows that sheep and bunnies can benefit each other. I'm not sure if the bunnies really benefit the sheep in any way whatsoever, but the sheep benefit the bunnies. This little girl here is going to happily demonstrate chowing down on her stuff, on her hay. Secondhand hay, right, girl? But they'll just pick through what they are interested in. Oh, she's going to come see the camera. And the one thing that we do not mind about these cages is whatever they don't eat falls through onto the ground, and the chickens come along and deal with that again later. So all in all, this is great for the garden in more ways than one.
Here's a good example of chickens working under the rabbit hutch. And exactly that point, they break down some of the hay that's sort of wasted by the bunnies. And of course that becomes excellent amendments for the garden. Now of course, sort of recycling the hay, or taking the good parts that are left and feeding to the rabbits, isn't the only way I don't know, you can get some use out of that waste hay. You can see in the pen behind me, this group of sheep, that pen is on an area that we're going to turn into a garden next year. So although we don't want a crazy accumulation of waste hay, we really don't have a problem with a little bit, because that'll just get worked into the soil when we actually get to the preparation next spring. That being said, the better pieces, the stuff that's still edible for other animals, we do take out. Animals waste food. That's kind of a given. In the wild, they kind of rely on their environments producing more than they can consume, and then you kind of take the place of that as the provider for them. But if you're not averse to doing a little bit of extra work and handling, I mean, for the rabbit stuff, you're not talking a significant amount of handling, you can stretch it a little bit further. One last thought on the rabbit front here is, well, two, I suppose. One, we're not feeding them the real nasty, yucky stuff, i.e. this is stuff that's come out of the feeder, so it's not been peed on by the sheep or anything like that. And the same goes for when we do feed it to the horses. This is still nothing wrong with it. Hay, it's just the sheep decide they don't want it. Goats, when we had the goats did the same thing, and we kind of siphoned it off with them as well. But the other thing that we've kind of noticed a little bit here, and this is super subjective to your weather, is this hay is a little damp. just because it's been out in the elements, and in some cases it's been snowed on or rained on, depending on the weather we have at the time. And the rabbits actually seem to like that. It's almost like it's been rehydrated and conditioned. Now, would it last long term that way? Absolutely not. So this is kind of a winter thing that we can do because the temperatures are cool, and we're dealing with small volumes. But hey, they put it to good use. It's got a little bit more water content in it, and as you can see from this girl here, they definitely approve of it. So even though over time we've kind of gone back and forth on the rabbits for a variety of reasons that we're not going to get into in this video, this is another example of where they do excel. You can take things that otherwise would be very much waste products, and they will use them relatively efficiently. That being said, that also makes them a little more time consuming. So as long as you're willing to put in that time, you can make use of things that otherwise would have just been waste on your homestead.